Okay, we're here on Overtime. Did the Saudi king slight Obama by not coming to Camp David this week? That's right. The Saudi king was supposed to show up at his Gulf Council conclave, and he snubbed us. I say good. I say let's break up with Saudi Arabia altogether. Why can't we do that?
I agree with that. That's actually my biggest fear about another Jeb Bush in the White House, is that one of those pictures of a Bush just holding the Saudi prince's hand and just knowing that we are just marching straight into something.
All presidents have held their hands, whether they held their hands
But you know what's happening right now? It's time for us to stop.
It is time for us.
Snub those thugs.
I remember articles in the 70s when I was in college about how we have to get off the oil, with the cartoon of the oil pump as a hypodermic needle that we're hooked on the oil. Remember Jimmy Carter? We have to energy independence.
Oh, no, but that would require regulation and government spending on infrastructure, and we can't have that.
An energy carbon tax. That would be the best thing.
Oh, the third thing, a tax, right? We can really have that.
But why don't we tax bad shit that hurts us, like oil, instead of good things that, like work? Is that crazy? Is that a crazy idea? Pass.
Yeah.
All right. Heather, which candidate for president will have the most aggressive anti-poverty agenda?
That's a very good question. So I think that Secretary Clinton actually gets a bum rap on issues like these. I don't think that she is necessarily the most progressive when it comes to challenging corporate power, but I think when it comes to, her first job was at the Children's Defense Fund, right? When it comes to these issues of poverty, these kitchen table economic issues, I think she's got a crusader's heart on this. I actually do.
Well, I don't.
No, but that's it.
I don't know about Crusader's heart, but yes, I agree. I don't worry about her on domestic issues with the left. I worry about her being too right on foreign policy. That's where I worry about her, is that she's a kind of a hawk, and a smattering of putting green applause for that. Yeah. Ayaan, what is the status of campus debate on Islamism? Oh, wow. Yes, you were disinvited. You were supposed to speak at Brandeis, right?
I was supposed to speak at Brandeis. And
I was disinvited this year, too. Look at that. We have that in common.
Disinvited.
We're
you were disinvited, Charles. Yeah.
Oh, we've all been disinvited.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
In fact,
Mike, have you been disinvited?
From America as a black guy.
I'm the opposite.
A boat came, picked us up, and worked for a few hundred years there. Like you
all right, you always have to top it.
I'm the opposite. I just got asked to be a commencement speaker. There's hope for anybody.
You are so funny because you started out as the person that nobody wanted to be near.
I got thrown out of every school I ever went to.
You're like Bill Clinton in the '90s. Like he was the awful guy who killed Vince Foster and got a blowjob. And then as time goes by, he's like the old building of the old whore. He's respectable now.
I know. I'm totally right. Nobody ever gets mad at anything I say.
You stick around long enough, and you're respectable.
You become an insider instead of an outsider.
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I think that we should be worried about what's going on in campuses, and not all campuses, but students need to go to college to learn how to think, not what to think. If we don't give them a chance.
Great way to say it.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you go to did you ever get there, or did that stick? Because I shamed them into actually rescinding the ban and actually letting these people.
I think Brandeis has been punished enough, and it's a campus culture. It's this whole thing about protecting minorities against what? Against learning how to think, minority students? Right. Yeah. Don't you trust minority students with...
It's so patriarchal, right? It's so patronizing.
It's patronizing, yes. and I'm more worried about that, really, than about... and I'm also worried about radical Islam on campuses, but I think if students learn how to think, they'll see for themselves the difference between the ideology of Sharia versus the ideology of liberalism. And they need to be able to differentiate that when they graduate. They need to have that chance.
What would you know about it?
What would I know? What would I know about it?
All right. Who was right about the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, Obama or Elizabeth Warren? Yes, the liberal fight between themselves got a little nasty this week. Obama said Elizabeth Warren was just another politician, and he called her Elizabeth. And then Sherrod Brown, the Democratic senator from Ohio, was like, hey, Obama, that's patronizing to use her first name. And Obama was like, hey, I'm not on the rag, you are. I made that last part up. He didn't say that, but it did get a...
Had to paraphrase it,
Does anybody understand this treaty?
No.
I'm in favor of free trade, but darned if I can figure it out when I read the news stories.
Right.
What's in the thing?
No, so you do read the news stories.
No, I stopped after the first paragraph.
Well,
I said, this is not for me.
It is very arcane. It is a little hard to get into.
But I am, the one thing, the few things that almost all economists I know of, and the left and right agree, is free trade is a win-win.
There's no such thing as free trade. Like, that's just a slogan. That's like saying the death tax or something like that.
Clean coal.
Right, exactly. Clean coal.
Trade is a win-win.
Right, trade is great. We're trading all the time. We're trading barbs, you and I. It's great.
Freely.
It's just what matters is the rules and how you write them, and frankly, who gets to write the rules. And the problem has always been with our version of free trade that corporations and their lobbyists get to write the rules, and it's cost American jobs every single time. And it's not made life better in the manufacturing countries where they're, dying in sweatshops.
So why do you think Obama is so for it?
So I actually think that there's a piece about this, about China, that is geopolitical, that is not about, jobs and economics at home, but this is actually about showing our biggest competitor that we have relationships with these nations in its area. That's a big piece of it that I don't think he can sort of say and lead with, but I think that is a major piece of it.
Maybe he had to make this bargain to get the climate deal with China. Presidents do things behind closed doors we don't know. And sometimes we're glad they do. Anyway, okay.
Well, I was going to say, trade means something else in my world.
Right. So does water. For John, how do you explain our obsession with celebrity?
Oh God, I don't know. When I hitchhiked across the country and everybody picked me up, no one asked about that. No one said to me, even if they knew who I were or anything. It was so amazing. Nobody wanted to talk about celebrity.
That's so true. The people have a whole different set of questions in the media. The media always asks me about the guests on the show.
Yeah.
People I run into ask me about the issues.
Or they talk about their lives.
Right.
Which I was much more interested in hitchhiking. I didn't feel like doing an interview in every car.
Right.
I wanted to hear what they had to say.
Right.
So it was amazing to me, even if they knew. Nobody said, "What's Johnny Depp like?" They which in real life in New York or LA they do.
Hey, I always want to ask you, what's Johnny Depp?
Actually,
people ask me what Bill Maher's like.
What do you say?
I say basically, I tell them the same thing that we said to each other after our first show.
Oh yeah, I thought you were an asshole. I thought you were an asshole.
You aren't as much of an asshole as I thought you were, and you said to me, and you aren't as much of an asshole as I thought. It was just love at first sight.
Yeah, isn't that a couple of charmers? Does George Stephanopoulos' donation to the Clinton Foundation compromise his journalistic integrity? I don't know if you heard this story.
Yeah.
George Stephanopoulos gave $75,000 to the Clinton Foundation, and he had to apologize. I think this is preposterous.
You gave $1 million to Obama.
I know, but George Stephanopoulos was the guy in the war room with Clinton in '92. We knew from the get-go where his politics were. So he gives to Clinton's charity so that they fight AIDS and malaria in the third world? What? I don't get it.
I cannot get excited about this.
I can't either. It's ridiculous. It'd be one thing if we didn't know where George Stephanopoulos stood, but we knew, and we somehow were okay with the fact that he's now an impartial newsman.
There's no such thing.
But this guy, more than most, we have to admit, we know, is in the tank.
They got his start in his career working with Clinton. Yeah.
Okay. Mike, what do you say to people who link crime and violence to rap music?
After I say you're stupid, rap music, hip hop,
as a entity was started in the late 60s, early 70s. Bunch of kids were in the burnt out gutter called the South. Yeah, I'm about to give it to you. I'm going to give you some game. Check this out. I know you didn't have like Jay and
I thought it was a little later than that.
No, I got you. Check me out. There's going to be a movie comes out called Rubble Kings. So in the late 60s, all these kids that were kind of the fallout kids of the black nationalist movement, civil rights, poor white people's movement, Puerto Rican nationalism movement, they had street gangs in New York and the Bronx that were just essentially burnt out. At some point, very late 60s, early 70s, these kids were like, we're gonna come up with our own peace treaty. Came up with their own peace treaty, decided that we aren't gonna engage in violence. Well, what's the alternative to violence? The Zulu nation was born out of that. Africa Bambaataa, Cool Herc. Google these, I'm telling you, it's way bigger than any of the rappers you think now, and the story is way more interesting. These kids, they were children, got together in the park, stole public electricity, which I strongly support, and decided to do park jams as an alternative to violence. So hip hop is not rap. Hip hop is the thing that houses rap, graffiti, breakdancing, and DJing and entrepreneurship. And what it did was give poor kids the opportunity to organize as an alternative to violence. Now, fast forward 40 years, it worked. A lot of money came into it. Guys bought big chains and tigers and lions and bears and shit, and we got off course. But at our core, hip hop, every time you see a successful rapper, you're seeing a job creator in a community. Jay-Z has provided hundreds of jobs and created dozens of millionaires, and has changed the economy in places that it wouldn't have been. Outkast in Atlanta personally changed the economy in the last 20 years. So I would say that people who say hip hop is violence, I would say let's start with the real violence starters. Let's start with the 3 major Abrahamic religions, and let's do away with their books. Let's start with governments and geo-war and politics. Let's do away with our leaders. So after we get down the violent scale of all the things that create real violence, to get to music, it'll be easy to get hip hop, because people in hip hop want to do the same thing you do. Talk shit about politics, smoke weed, and date dope black women. That's it.
Stop using the Google mic. But Mike, wasn't Rapper's Delight in 1979
that's the first record
rap
that
I thought it was Carla Thomas and Otis.
Yeah, 79 was Rapper's Delight. But hip hop's birthday is November the 12th, 72 or 73. The official birthday. It's older than me. I remember the birthday because it's my daughter's birthday. Hey, Anaya. But it started way before then. It just broke. People figured out how to sell it.
Right.
The kids started it as an alternative to violence. That's what disturbed me about Baltimore.
Sure.
When I was on
Throw your hands in the air.
Like
Why can't we get back to that,
They said it,
like
but they said in Baltimore, Crips and Bloods have united with the BGF to kill cops. But on my timeline, on my social media, I saw gang members saying, we're going to be about peace. We aren't warring with each other anymore. They didn't say anything about killing cops. They didn't say anything about, it was the first time in my young life that I saw gang members say, since 1992, say we're going to invoke our own peace treaty. And what government should have done is what we do when we go to a foreign land, get all the people who were rebels and sit them down together and say, let's do some truth and reconciliation. Let's fix this thing from the ground up. And I think we need to start engaging hip hop and young people in that way. And I think things will change. We'll see systemic change.
You get the last word, Killer.
I love you, brother.
And Killer Mike is because you killed the mic.
Because I killed the mic.
Not because you killed.
I'm killing the mic.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panel.